For the next two segments, we're joined by James Delingpole of jamesdelingpole.com. He's a libertarian conservative columnist, novelist, blogger, and recipient of the Journalism Award, the Batista Prize. He has published several novels and 2 political books, including How to Be Right, The Essential Guide to Making Liberals History, and Welcome to Obama Land, I Have Seen Your Future and It Doesn't Work. He has a new book coming out. He writes for the Daily Telegraph and many other publications. We had Lord Christopher Monckton joining us yesterday for an hour from inside the UN confab, and he said their spirits are down, but they do want to ram through their relocation of populations, their post-industrial world, their global government. It's all right out in the open. And will cause over 1 billion deaths in the third world conservatively, according to the different breakdowns Lord Monckton and others have done, if they cut the carbon off to those people. And they don't care if the ClimateGate information came out. They're going forward, and they're producing TV ads and ads for theaters that show children being murdered by explosives by their school teachers if they don't submit to the carbon dictatorship. Suddenly they're saying, yes, we're fascist. Fascism is good if it's for the earth. Yes. So it seems that in a type of mentally ill temper tantrum, they are just frothing and revealing themselves and saying, you know what, it wasn't about rising sea levels. There's too many people. So it's their hate letter to humanity. You know, I love humanity. I'm a fan of man. They're the opposite. They hate humanity. They hate people they don't control. This is a control freak religion. Mr. Delingpole, do you agree that we're seeing them more and more really reveal who they are?
Yeah, I think the mask is slipping. You were lucky enough to talk to Christopher Monckton yesterday. I think his analysis of what has gone on at Cancun is entirely correct. That it has been spun in the mainstream media as this non-event, as this kind of disaster. You know, no policies were formulated, etc., etc. This is actually not true. It is world government through the back door, administered by the United Nations, imposing yet further climate regulation on the world. I mean, the idea that Western countries are to provide $100 billion a year by 2020 to some new UN fund, that sounds very sinister to me. We don't get to vote on this. We don't get to control where this money is spent. These are faceless apparatchiks of the UN world government system. And of course, as we know, it is all based on a lie. You know, a fundamental lie that man-made carbon dioxide is a poison and that it is warming the world. Well, let me tell you, I am speaking in England, where we have just had the 2 coldest weeks in end of November, beginning of December, since records began. This is the coldest end of November, beginning of December, since the Central England temperature record started in the 1650s. Now, if that's not a sign that global warming isn't such a big problem as the UN tells us, I don't know what is.
Well, they spin that and they say, oh, it's cold because it's warming. They're saying the same thing in Cancun, where they're having record cold temperatures down there in the Yucatan Peninsula, right down by the end of North America, where Central America starts. And they're going more and more into deceptive mode. On one hand, they're telling us that they're doing this to save us from ourselves, too many people. Ted Turner saying it's a one-child policy. But as you rightly said, they're now playing along like, oh, we don't want anything big. Just give us this $100 billion, set up all these new bureaucracies. So it's global governance by stealth. James Delingpole of the Telegraph, tell the listeners out there and viewers from all these documents you're going over, what is most important coming out of this confab?
I think what you have to look at it in context. You have to remember how it all started with the Rio Earth Summit, founded by Maurice Strong, the Canadian Marxist and believer in one world government. And there they set down the blueprint for one world government, which, of course, you know very well, is called Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 effectively uses the cause of environmentalism as a way, as a kind of righteous cloak with which to advance one world government control through taxation, through regulation.
It gives them the moral high ground to be our godlike priest, and then we buy our carbon indulgences from them, or we go to a figurative humanistic hell.
Yeah, well, there's one thing I admire about these people. They are very ingenious the way they can turn on a pin. Okay, so for a long time they've been telling us. We had one guy in England a few years ago saying, "Look, kids, you may not ever see snow again. Future generations will not know what the white stuff that we skied in was." Okay, well, suddenly we get this cold weather, this inconveniently cold weather, and suddenly they say, no, you don't understand. When we have cold weather, that is a sign of global warming. It's a sign that the Gulf Stream is freezing up, and we're going to get even warmer. Or is it colder? Or maybe there's ocean acidification, or if not ocean acidification, there's some other new thing we can dream up. Just give us a chance. And this is how it goes on all the time. They don't really care about. They use the Leninist method, which is essentially any lie you tell in the service of what you believe is a good cause. Any lie is justified, and this is the problem. It doesn't matter what the weather does. It doesn't matter what the truth is. They will go on pursuing that agenda of control.
Well, now they say the ocean's going to turn into acid, and that an ice age is coming. They said that back in the 60s and 70s, that it was an ice age. Then they said it was warming. In the summer, it's warming. In the winter, it's cooling. But more and more people are seeing through them. Politically, they're losing the people, but they don't care. They're trying to take over cities, counties, different regions. They just never stop beating people over the head with it. Meanwhile, all these real, serious environmental problems are completely ignored.
Yes, I think we live on the two-tier planet now. There is one part of the planet which is run by people, the people in government, the environmental movement, the people in the energy companies. They are all pushing their agenda. And then you've got people like, you and me, people who listen to this show. Really, most ordinary people now look outside their windows and they go, hang on a second, we've been told it's getting warmer and warmer. Why is it so cold outside? Where is the evidence that CO2 is causing all this? So free citizens are looking at the world and saying, enough is enough. This is a country. But administrators, bureaucrats are carrying on as if nothing has changed, as if ClimateGate never happened, as if the scientists hadn't been exposed as frauds and shams and crooks. And this is a problem. This is not just to do with climate. This is part of a bigger picture, which is to do with liberty versus tyranny.
Well, in fact, that's where I was going next, James. We have the Indian ambassador, a woman, with her crotch groped, put in the glass cage, and she says, I'm never coming back to the U.S. again. Other countries are freaking out. They come here, and people actually, in many cases, stick their hands down their pants. They put them in radiation scanners. They're now putting up at Walmart's, 800 of them, telescreens with Janet Napolitano, big sis, literally saying, watch the shoppers, terrorists could be anywhere. But then meanwhile, the Castle drawbridge is open, the southern border is basically wide open. That would be like defending some French fortress from invaders, 500 years ago, and opening all of the gates, but then running in and having the castle guards point their swords at a 2-year-old in a straw bed. I mean, the gates are wide open, the country's overrun, and they're running around the countryside training pastors to spy on their flock and look for libertarian extremists. I mean, this is on record, and they don't care if everybody's waking up and not flying and getting angry. They say, hey, you don't like that? We're going to have TSA on the streets.
Yeah, well, Alex, I do worry hearing you talk about these things because, as you know, here I am in the EU SSR. I feel that the battle for liberty has already been lost in this part of the world, and I look across the Atlantic. Maybe this is just a case of the grass is always greener. I look across the Atlantic and I think at least you Americans are are going to show us in Europe the way out of this mess. You are going to show us what it means to be free. And, you know, my hope is that 2012, you are going to get a small government president, somebody who really understands the problem, somebody who believes in liberty, who understands the first principles of your founding fathers. If this doesn't happen, we are all totally stuffed. I mean, the West is lost. I see the possibility of some semblance of freedom of a kind operating in the East, you know, but I mean, they have different ways over there. I mean, I don't think the Chinese are a particularly good example, and I mean, countries like Singapore are quite authoritarian, but at least they have a semblance of economic freedom and that they understand the principles of small government. If you Americans do not learn your lesson of what's happened in Europe, you are going to be screwed as we are screwed. And I think you should think very, very carefully about who you elect as your president. And you need to monitor all these Republicans who've come in, you know, in the midterms, who are talking about Tea Party values and stuff. I think you want to be monitoring them very carefully, because I'm already seeing signs that they are just corporatist pork barrelers like all the rest.
Well, absolutely, and we hope for somebody like Ron Paul or Rand Paul. The problem is that it takes close to $1 billion to run successfully for president.
Yeah.
There's another way to defeat them, to take the states back and then block the federal government. That's what the founders envisioned. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. We've got to go at this from every angle and resist and say no, no, no. But speaking of European tyranny, I'm not really a fan of some of the George Soros-type connections to WikiLeaks. And I
agree. I totally agree with you. It's interesting. Libertarians in Britain, and perhaps it's the same in America, are completely divided over Julian Assange. Or how do you pronounce his surname? I don't know. He's Australian, isn't he? I mean, some people are saying that he's an absolute hero. You know, we should be celebrating. He's fighting our battles. I think he's probably a bit of a kook. And the idea that, you know, if George Soros is funding something, you know it's going to be a bad thing.
Well, that's where I'm going with this, is he's clearly the patsy. And you notice the leaks are just continuing. They put him out there, push him to the front.
Yeah.
I interviewed John Young of Cryptome. He's on record with registering it. Then it got taken over by Cass Sunstein, the White House regulations czar, who openly says infiltrate the web to bring the web down. Now they're introducing legislation to censor the press. They're talking about indicting New York Times reporters. And so I think this is all an elaborate event to basically have a Pearl Harbor or 9/11 or the internet, and then come in and restrict, not George Soros, but people like James Delingpole or Alex Jones. And I've been saying this for months. Now it's beginning to unfold. But regardless of what we think of Assange, dressed up in clownish suits and things, out there playboying. I mean, who blames him? He's a worldly guy. He's having some fun. But the larger issue is we can't allow him under EU feminazi rules with this woman with CIA connections and writing things about how to set men up in the legal system, and they're throwing parties for him the day after he supposedly rapes them, and that they're sending text out on Twitter about how wonderful it all is, and they're buying him bus tickets, but then they're saying, well, he argued about the condom, and so that's the, quote, liberal fascism, is that if you disagree with global warming, they want to arrest you in Europe. If you have unprotected sex, it's rape. I mean, that's what the feminists teach. They teach that sex is rape when a man's involved, because men are the devil.
Yes, absolutely. But I think you're absolutely right on the bigger picture here, Alex. It is very. There is no question that the system, the various governments, the various administrators in Europe and in America would dearly love to close down the internet, or rather limit its freedom.